Dan Orr, he is the man, page 6 of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, Recreational Diving Fatalities and Underlying Health Issues. So the question is, what's risky about scuba diving, and what is the second leading cause of death in our sport? Going from one
Well,
upbeat story to another. Here we go.
Yes.
when I do my these webinars that I do on dive safety, one of the things I talk about is risk. And what I do is I look at not only risk in scuba diving, but also risk in other sports. And I have a list of things. And one of the things that scuba diving is, it falls somewhere between horseback riding and table tennis. So your risk of dying on a dive is somewhere between riding on a horse and playing ping pong.
You put an eye out with that ball. Come on.
Well, and in fact, actually, I just to satisfy my own curiosity about what is out there in the internet and stratosphere, I went on ChatGPT today, and I asked the question, is scuba diving a risky sport? And what it said was, scuba diving is a low-risk sport, which is really good. Yeah, because a lot of times people perceive it as being a high-risk sport. But also, in the other part of that question, where you're talking about the fact that, what is the second most leading cause of death in scuba diving, and it's cardiac events. And when you look at the number one leading cause of death, it's listed as drowning. But that really doesn't tell the whole story. And it's listed as drowning because of the fact that a significant number of the people doing autopsies following a scuba diving accident fatality have no clue on what to look for to determine what the real cause of that fatality is. So what they do, because the person is wet and they're dead, they simply list it as drowning. And in reality, about 30 to 40% of all the fatalities in some way, shape, or form have to do with cardiac events. And it's getting more and more prevalent because, of course, part of it has to do with our lifestyle, part of it has to do with a lot of other things, our age, because we do have an aging diving population. So it's not uncommon for those cardiac events to be a leading cause of fatality. And in fact, the genesis of this was when I looked at two reports. In 2008, Dan did a research project actually that involved looking at 947 fatalities to determine what the triggering event was that turned a dive into a fatality. And the number one triggering event in 2008 was running out of breathing gas underwater. So 41% of the fatalities had to do with people running out of breathing gas underwater. They then looked at another group of fatalities in 2015 to see if there'd been any change. And the change was dramatic. And now the number one leading triggering event was underlying health issues. And a significant number of those were cardiac events. So that's one reason why in the article I'm saying you really need to look out for your cardiac health. You really need to, once you reach the age of 40 or even earlier, if you have some other warning signs, is talk to your physician and have a cardiac evaluation along with your annual physical. In fact, the American Academy of Underwater Sciences today just sent me a copy of their new medical questionnaire, and it also mentions in there that science divers over the age of 40 should have an annual physical.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, health is important when you're scuba diving. I know I'm not a perfect example when you look at me, but I take it pretty serious. And,
That's a great article. And you brought up a good point about the aging population. I know we've done a lot of articles on it. Sorry to cut you off there, Greg. But, I was recently talking with somebody on a call, and they said, the dive retailing industry in the United States is just going out of business. It's like crazy. People are just shutting their stores down and or they're selling I said to him, I said, well, have you ever done the math? Most dive shops in this country were started in the 60s and 70s. That's when the sport became commercial, where you could actually, the average person could do it. Got, of course, easier in the 80s, thanks to our Dr. Alex here. But but most of those were started in the 70s. Well, if you took a guy fresh out of college, or out of the military, which is where these people came from, our dive instructors back then, they were in their 20s, early 20s. Multiply the math, they're 65, 75. In the 80s right now. Well, of course, that's when you're going to retire and when you're going to either, sell your shop or turn it over. So a lot of the aging in our industry is a victim of how young our sport is.
Yeah.
We're only the second generation of our sport, technically.
Oh, yeah.
good point. Yeah, but I think it keeps you young.